speech, Help, I'm Trapped on a Desert Island with a Cow. Stephen James.
Hello everyone, it's good to see you. So, as a person who has been vegan for about half a decade now, I've had time to reflect on some of the popular arguments against veganism. Some of the roadblocks that new vegans sometimes find themselves stumbling on. I noticed that a few common themes reoccur, and it's my hope that I will have a chance to at least address, if not kind of clear, some of these misconceptions, concerns that give rise to some of the arguments against veganism. It's very often strawman arguments. So let's start with the biggest one. Concern number one. It is impossible to live a healthy life without meat because meat contains essential nutrients that can't be found in other places. We've all heard it, so let's say it together. 1, 2, 3. Where do you get your protein? Again, once again, everyone. You haven't noticed enough. Where do you get your protein? Every vegan you know probably has an answer to this because there seems to be this pervading idea in our culture that animal flesh has magic properties that can't be found in other places. In truth, it is the vitamins and minerals in animal flesh that people are referring to, and thankfully, pretty much every one of these things can be found in healthy plant-based diet. So, for example, calcium can be found in walnuts. Omega-3s can be found in walnuts, hemp, so forth and so on. Iron can be found in spinach and green leafy vegetables. Protein. Deep breath while I channel Dr. Esselstyn. Beans, peanuts, quinoa, hemp, granola, buckwheats, nuts, pumpkins, sunflower kernels, various vegetables, and of course soy. Really, people, it's not as difficult as you've been told that it is. It's not that hard. Concern number 2. Vegans care about cows and chickens more than people. I bumped into this last July when I was demonstrating against Ringling Brothers and their use of elephants in their circus shows. Somebody asked me, what about all the people suffering in Africa? What about them? Don't you care about them? This is an example of a classical logical fallacy called a false dilemma. It assumes that a person can't care equally about two things, or that if they care about one thing, they can't care about another. An example of why this statement is so ridiculous. I can use an analogy. If I were to say I have an interest in astronomy and other planets, could you possibly say, therefore you must be unconcerned about affairs on Earth? Does that make any sense? Why doesn't that make any sense? By assuming that vegan concern with non-humans negates the possibility of concern about humans, or that person must be apathetic to affairs that affect humans. People who make this statement display their own ignorance and lack of understanding. And the truth is that a great number of vegans, people who are vegan specifically for moral and ethical reasons, connect their concern about non-humans' well-being, or the well-being of non-humans, with concerns about human welfare. So, for example, you'll have people like Gary Francione, or Carol Adams, or the Carnism author, Melanie Joy, who will connect veganism to sexism, racism, heterosexism, or homophobia, whatever you want to call it. And they'll see that these things are connected. Basically, that veganism represents an expansion of the circle of compassion, just as abolitionist movements and suffrage movements have expanded that kind of consciousness in past centuries and still continue to today. Concern number 3, but what if there's nothing to eat but a cow on a desert island? We've all heard this, it's totally contrived, but we all have our favorite answers. Even assuming that somehow we can take down a cow, a 2-ton cow or whatever, how much does a cow weigh with our bare hands? I think most vegans would acknowledge that obligate carnivorous behavior is not problematic, or it's not as problematic as the kind of carnivorous behavior that takes place in a society where there's choice. It's why we don't really seriously give much thought to concerns about sharks and lions and wolves eating other animals. The question at the core of the animal rights movement is, in a society where we don't have to eat animals to survive, is it morally defensible to continue to do so? And there's also the concern that people always tell us because they need to grasp at straws. What about plants? They have feelings. Plants are alive. What about them? these people are omnivores, so they eat plants as well. But their clear understanding and their sudden concern for plant rights tends to manifest when you tell them that you only eat plants. Humans are obligate plant eaters, so it's not a moral question yet. If there ever comes a day when humans don't have to eat plants to survive, then we can actually have this discussion. Until then, we are obligate plant eaters. And also, the evidence for plant consciousness is a lot sketchier than the evidence for the consciousness of pigs or cows or chickens or sheep or any of the other animals that are typically used for food in our society. So I think that there are a bunch of other things we could talk about. There are a bunch of other popular complaints about vegan diets or veganism that we've all become aware of. But ultimately, I think it boils down to the fact that there are a lot of misconceptions, and it's not the supremely difficult thing, veganism, that it is often made to be. Thanks for your time, everyone. I appreciate this.